Hello humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. Welcome again to the channel, and we're going to talk about the Fantastic Four of gaming in the 6th generation. And let's talk about when these Fantastic Four ruled the world. That's right, we're talking about the GameCube, we're talking about the DREAMCAST, we're talking about the PlayStation 2, and we're talking about the original Microsoft. Let me tell you that Tokyo and E3 2001, I believe it was a great time in gaming. You know, this generation right here was the biggest leap, in my opinion, right? And this is just an opinion, guys. We're just sitting here talking, okay? I'm not telling you the absolute truth and giving you the absolute data, but I just want to get a topic going of interesting conversation. These are the things that I like to talk about, things that I would talk about if I had any peers, right, that collect video games as I do, that have as much video games as I do. But let's face it, how many game hoarders are out there that are not on YouTube, right? None of my friends have this disease that I have or collect to the extent that I do. And these are the things, you know, when I'm not working on work and my homework right now that I'm trying to get the 2nd degree, let me tell you, this is where my mind goes to. I'm right in the middle of finals. I just finished a paper and I just need a break, right? And here in my formerly nicotine-stained hands, I've had the kiddos print out certain things for me because I've been thinking about these things for a while. You know, and it just makes it easier for me now that I have reduced screen time while I'm going through recovery, just to write these mental notes down. Because I'm speaking about things that happened yesteryear, right? And I really want to talk about this generation because, like I said, to me, it was the biggest leap. And it was the window to open the video game industry to a period of creativeness that we haven't seen since. And let me tell you, the reason is because this is pre-internet. This is pre-social media. When companies were just coming up with new ideas in order to sell more games, and were not worried about the online. This was barely the beginning of online. So they weren't worried about selling you subscriptions, about selling you DLC or anything like that. These companies just wanted to make great games to sell the most amount of games possible and survive in the market. These are some of the most beloved consoles by retro gamers, and with good reason. This generation was leaps and bounds ahead of anything that was existing before, as far as storage capacity, technology, and game design. Now I'm going to go over some figures. They're just general figures, guys. They're not the absolute answers, right? I'm going to give you some figures that you know, as far as storage capacity, that just could give us an idea of what kind of leap we made. In this writing, I want to explore the reasons why, and I'm calling this a writing because this comes out of my Substack, guys. If you guys want to know what I'm thinking about, what I plan making videos on, go to my Substack, subscribe. I'm going to put a link down below, and you can use the reader if you want to listen to it. You know, not everything that I write I make into a video, sometimes because of time constraints, or I just don't think it's a good video subject, but you know, I want to write about it, or sometimes I really just don't have time with, you know, family, the baby, and everything else. But let me go back here. These are some of the most beloved consoles where you're talking about the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, the Dreamcast, and the original Xbox. Man, we love those consoles. And it was a huge leap. This is the beginning of this transition period that we saw from having just horrible ports of arcade games in our home consoles, whether it's Asteroids or Pac-Man on the 2600, or having just a lesser version of Final Fight on the Super Nintendo, to having X-Men Children of the Atom on the Saturn, which was almost arcade perfect, Street Fighter 3 on the Dreamcast, Soul Calibur 3 on the PlayStation 2, and so many others, right? This generation started the mass migration from arcades to the home market, to home consoles, where you could just take those games and play them at home. The evolution from the 5th generation of gaming, and now we're talking PlayStation, Nintendo 64, Sega, Saturn, you know, some people might say the 3DO, and you know, I'll throw a little bit in there. to the sixth generation, PlayStation 2, Sega Dreamcast, Nintendo GameCube, and Microsoft Xbox, is one of the most significant and technological leaps in video game history. The leap wasn't just about better graphics or just more powerful hardware. It was mostly about storage capacity, which led to more creativity. The ability to store more massive amounts of data on CDs and DVDs allowed developers to create more expansive worlds, give characters more detailed, make more detailed models, give players a bigger, more immersive game experience, for example. And as a result, in this era of gaming, man, we have some of the most beloved games and one of the most beloved about, from the retro gamer perspectives today, right? I mean, it's really a great time period for you to collect if you want to start collecting. But rather than just read off lists of games that, we've all gone over again and again, I want to give you some figures and some real numbers as far as the capacities that enable game developers and programmers to create some of the best games that we've ever played and some of the most remembered games we've ever played. Now, let's do a real quick comparison here, right? Let's say that you wanted to back up your games. That you wanted to back up your game collection, right, in ROMs, or take out the ROMs or in games. However legal way you want to do that. You want to back up your games. Well, the Atari 2600, for example, the games were on average about 16 kilobytes, right? That's what it was. For the Sega Master System, it was 256. For the NES, 256. For the TurboGrafx, a little bit more, 512 kilobytes. For the Sega Genesis, you got up to 1 megabyte, sometimes a little more, maybe a couple of cartridges out there. The Super NES, 2 megabyte average. And if you wanted, just to give you an example, if you wanted to store the entire NES collection, if you own it and you want to back it up, quote unquote, it would take about 3 to 4 gigabytes to do that if you wanted to store it. Now look at the average sizes of those games. And it explains why it's so easy for the Chinese market to make handhelds with these retro games on them, right? They don't take that much space. Put all your backups there. But now let's look at, the fifth generation. Let's look at the Sega CD. The Sega CD, the average game was about 400 megabytes. If you wanted to back up your entire collection, it would take about 60 gigabytes, 59 gigabytes around there. 3DO, right, let's look at that one. Not that popular, but still, believe it or not, it would take about 105 gigabytes if you wanted to back up your entire collection. The Sega Saturn, 521 gigs, almost half a terabyte, right? With games being about 500 megabytes apiece. The PlayStation 1, man, you would have a doozy there, because the Sega Saturn only had about 1,000 games, but the PlayStation 1 had about 3,300, just about, and that would take about 1.7, 1.6 terabytes, just about, right? So you can look at what kind of massive difference that was. Now, in comparison, the Nintendo 64, which was cartridge-based, and the games range anywhere from 8 to 64 megabytes, depending on what it was, and some of them, most of them, were average about 32 megabytes per game, I think. Anyway, the Nintendo 64 would take you about 12 to 13 gigs to store the entire library. However you want to back up your system, right? Now let's look at the sixth generation, right? Compared to the figures that we just read. And let's look at a list of qualifying sixth generation consoles, right? That we're talking about here, based on, the subject of this video. The Sega Dreamcast, we're going to come out 1998, 1999 here in the US, about 600 games, plus or minus, whatever. They were about 700 megabytes, but the capacity of the GROM was 1.2 gigabytes. So 700 is about the average size of game, but you could go up to 1.2 depending on the game. The PlayStation 2, over 4,300 games, well over 4,300 games. You could have up to 2.5 gigs in a single DVD, but you could have games that were up to 8.5 And the same goes for the Microsoft Xbox, right? Because some DVDs, some games were multiple discs, right? So you could have up to 8.5 gigs in a single release. For the GameCube, believe it or not, with that mini disc, the average game was about 1.2, and the game discs themselves could hold about 1.5 gigs, which is pretty impressive for those little discs, right? Now, let's just look at the rough numbers. Right? These are just average, guys. They're not completely accurate, okay? So don't. If you found other information other than the publicly available information that I did, if I'm off by, whatever, a terabyte or a gigabyte, whatever, I'm just giving you rough numbers to set an example of what the difference in technologies was, right? I'm going to put a link down below, just so you guys know, to the Substack, so you can read the article and the references I got from there. But anyway, the 5th generation would probably take you anywhere from 2.5, maybe up to 3 terabytes to store the entire libraries if you own them all, right? If you wanted to back them up. We're talking about PS1, N64, and Saturn, right? Those 3. Yeah, I mean, if you are really diehard, you want to add the 3DO, then you would have like 100 gigabytes more, 105 gigabytes more. But you look at that compared to the 6th generation, which is the PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, the GameCube, and the Xbox, it would take you about 15 terabytes. So 2.4 terabytes for 5th generation, 2.5 maybe, say 3, up to 15. So 5 times is more, right? It was a 5-time expansion, a multiplication of power that you had. Now this leap meant that the 6th generation games could include full voice acting, so now you could hire actors, massive open worlds, right? Just bigger games, more complex AI systems, you could just store more data, and much longer gameplay experience, which everybody loved, right? They were long enough, but not too long like they are today, right? They weren't 100 hours, I mean, there's some, right, that you can make 100, but just in general, they were just right amount, maybe 20, 30 hours, you could be in there, maybe less, 15 to 20, but you were in that sweet spot where you could just play enough game and look forward to the other one, because there were so many constant releases that you don't have today. The production of games was much faster. So you didn't even want to make the games that long, because if you did, then you would run into the sequel the next time, or the games would just take longer to make. But that leap really defined the era. That combination of the higher storage capacity, improved processing power, and new game design possibilities gave the 6th generation just unprecedented creative freedom and made it a really unforgettable era in gaming, and that's why it's so favored by retro gamers today like myself. You buy those games, you own those games. You didn't have to worry about being on the internet. You don't have to worry about microtransactions. You didn't have to worry about social media. You didn't have to worry about who hated the game before it was released, right? You actually played the game and you made up your own mind whether it was good or not. And whenever I look at these pictures, right, that this leap really cemented in my mind, I see those 4 banners up there, which I included in the thumbnail, which come from the Tokyo Game Show 2001. You could also find them at E3 2001, where you had all those 4 banners, where you had the Fantastic Four up there, as I'm calling them right now, of gaming, just putting up their best foot forward, trying to survive in the market. And what an age of creativity. I mean, you're talking about games like, Metal Gear Solid 2, Halo, Super Smash Brothers, and just so many more, guys. I mean, I could run out of time here. Like I said, you went from having, crappy arcade ports to having like Soul Calibur 3, the Street Fighter series, and having so many games that were almost arcade perfect. You didn't have to go to the arcade anymore. Your friends could come into your house and just hang out and play. Now, guys, I'm getting all excited here, getting all giddy. My game hoarder instincts are kicking in. All right, I have to stop myself from going online right now and shopping because I'm getting so excited. But let's wrap it up, right? The sixth generation of gaming was a revolution, not just in hardware capabilities, but in just the sheer scale of games. Right? We had so many games, in so many quality of games, a lot more than we had before. There's still some classics, of course, in fourth or third generation. But I'm just saying as far as volume, because we have, we shifted from megabytes to gigabytes, from cartridges to discs. And this really enabled developers and publishers to craft richer, more interactive, immersive games that still captivate players today. People still buy these games today. You can go buy a Dreamcast and experience the Street Fighter series and just have a great time. I mean, just look at all the classics on the Dreamcast. You could still buy an Xbox right now and start playing Halo, and you would have a great time. I mean, just think of that. You could buy a GameCube and play Super Smash Brothers and have a great time. And there's so many other games like this. The PlayStation 2, my lord, you can go back to the PlayStation 2. So many classics, even obscure games. You can go back and play Shin Megami Tensei games that'll take you hours to master. And there's so much more. So much more. You could play your old DVDs on the PlayStation 2. So much fun. This is what makes this era of gaming so special. Especially if you love retro media, the old inspirations for a lot of the new games that come out today, they're still palpable today. This era of gaming is just more exciting. You don't get this level of hype now than you did back then. Because back then, it was an undiscovered country, as Captain Kirk used to say. Right? You didn't know what was going to happen. You showed up there, and you only knew that you were going to look at new things. You weren't worried about really spoilers other than rumors. You were going to get to experience these games day one. Right? At these shows, you would see the graphics, and you'd just be mesmerized, man. If I could go back in time, let me tell you, and if I could go back and just visit one show, it would be this one. The Tokyo 2001 video. Man, if we could time travel, right? You would go back and get all those collections. I'd get a full Saturn collection. I'd go back and get a full TurboGrafx 16 collection. A full Nintendo 60. Oh man, I'd probably get them all. I'm a game hoarder. What can I say? I just go back and hoard everything. If we only knew, right? If we only knew. Guys, thank you so much for having patience with the channel during this time. I can't believe we just hit 1 million views on a channel that I really don't do much on. I thought I would hit 1 million after I graduated and came back and did more content, more better content, if you will, or live stream, things like that. But, I'm always thankful. I'm thankful for you guys that stuck around all this time, that have been listening to me for all this time. Thank you so much. And it's always great to sit down and have a conversation about retro video games, a hobby that, is exploding right now in some areas, but for those of us who are a little bit older, we have less and less people to talk to. Then such as my case, that's the reason for this channel, because I don't get to talk about retro video games with most of the people in my sphere. Most of them don't collect, video games at all or play them. And, the best I'll get is sometimes when they visit the house and they'll see the room, they're like, oh, take me back and we'll have a conversation then. But other than that, on the weekly, they're not thinking about the sixth generation, let me tell you. But thank you so much for paying attention. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for your likes. Make sure you hit that like button for me. You subscribe if you haven't done so. And guys, I will catch you on the next one. Take care. New videos every Monday and Sunday. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Gen X Gamer. Remember to like and subscribe, click that notification bell, and remember, never ever be afraid to be happy. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. New
videos every Monday and Sunday. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Gen X Gamer. Remember to like and subscribe, click that notification bell, and remember, never ever be afraid to be happy. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. New videos every Monday and Sunday. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Gen X Gamer. Remember to like and subscribe, click that notification bell, and remember, never ever be afraid to be happy. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.